The Pacific Ocean has become a combat zone. On October 21 and 22, 2025, the United States unleashed precision strikes on 2 vessels in the eastern Pacific off Colombia's coast, resulting in 5 casualties and shattering any pretense that America's controversial counter-narcotics campaign would remain regionally contained. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth released dramatic footage showing small boats erupting in brilliant flashes of flame, their occupants neutralized before they could comprehend what hit them. Black smoke billowed into the sky as packages, presumably narcotics, bobbed uselessly in the water alongside debris and wreckage. This wasn't traditional drug interdiction. This was warfare, pure and simple, and it marked the 8th and 9th strikes in an unprecedented military campaign that has now resulted in at least 37 casualties across 2 oceans in less than 2 months. The expansion from Caribbean waters to the Pacific represents far more than geographic spread. It signals that the Trump administration is prepared to hunt alleged drug traffickers anywhere in Latin American waters, transforming vast oceanic expanses into combat zones where suspected criminals can be eliminated without arrest, trial, or appeals. The drug war, long fought with handcuffs and courtrooms, has evolved into something unrecognizable. A global military operation employing the same weapons, tactics, and legal justifications that defined America's 2-decade war on terror. The only difference? Instead of hunting al-Qaeda in the mountains of Afghanistan, we're neutralizing smugglers on the open ocean. The timeline of escalation reads like a steady drumbeat toward inevitable expansion. In August 2025, the United States began deploying warships to the Caribbean, officially citing counter-narcotics operations, but quietly positioning an armada capable of projecting devastating military power anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. Then came September 1, the watershed moment, when an airstrike obliterated a speedboat departing from San Juan de Ulare, Venezuela, eliminating 11 individuals instantly. President Trump announced the attack from the White House the following day, releasing footage and declaring the vessel belonged to Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan transnational criminal organization that has become his administration's boogeyman of choice. Follow-up strikes came on September 15, 19, and October 3, each resulting in more casualties in Caribbean waters. By mid-October, Reuters reported a previously unannounced attack on what the administration described as a narco-submarine, a semi-submersible vessel designed to evade radar detection. For the first time, survivors were taken into custody rather than neutralized outright, creating thorny legal questions about detention authority that the administration preferred to avoid. Within days, those survivors were repatriated to Ecuador and Colombia, effectively sweeping the legal dilemma under the rug before anyone could file habeas corpus petitions or demand access to attorneys. Then came the Pacific strikes. 2 attacks in 48 hours, 5 casualties, and a clear message: there are no safe waters for suspected drug traffickers. The campaign has officially gone global, with no geographic boundaries limiting where targets might be engaged. Defense Secretary Hegseth's rhetoric leaves no room for ambiguity. Just as al-Qaeda waged war on our homeland, these cartels are waging war on our border and our people. There will be no refuge or forgiveness, only justice. It's language designed to trigger post-9/11 reflexes, framing drug smugglers not as criminals, but as enemy combatants engaged in an existential struggle against the American homeland. The military hardware arrayed in this operation is staggering in its lethality and sophistication. 3 Aegis-guided missile destroyers patrol the region, their phased array radar systems tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously, while vertical launch systems bristle with Tomahawk cruise missiles. 3 amphibious assault ships carry approximately 6,000 sailors and Marines, enough military personnel to invade a small nation. Their flight decks host MV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor transports capable of rapid insertion of special operations forces anywhere within a 500-mile radius. Most dramatically, F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters have been forward deployed to Puerto Rico. These 5th-generation multi-role fighters represent the pinnacle of American air superiority technology. capable of prosecuting targets with surgical accuracy while remaining virtually invisible to enemy detection systems. Overhead, P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft conduct persistent surveillance, their advanced sensors scanning thousands of square miles of ocean for suspicious vessels. MQ-9 Reaper drones, the infamous unmanned aerial vehicles that became synonymous with America's counter-terrorism campaigns in Afghanistan and Pakistan, loiter for hours before unleashing Hellfire missiles with literally surgical precision. Perhaps most ominously, a nuclear-powered attack submarine prowls the depths off South America, capable of launching Tomahawk cruise missiles from submerged positions hundreds of miles from their targets. A cocaine smuggler on the Pacific could be obliterated by a weapon launched from a platform he never knew existed, fired from a location he could never predict. The strikes themselves likely employed joint direct attack munitions, GPS-guided bombs that transform conventional ordnance into precision weapons with accuracy measured in feet rather than yards. The technological gap between American forces and their targets is almost comical in its disparity. These aren't peer competitors with advanced air defense systems. They're speedboats with outboard motors, go-fast vessels designed for speed and maneuverability, not combat. Against F-35 stealth fighters and Reaper drones with electro-optical targeting systems, they might as well be rowboats. It's not a fair fight. It's not meant to be. The Trump administration's legal justification for these strikes represents either creative interpretation or outright distortion of established law, depending on who you ask. The cornerstone of their argument rests on designating drug cartels as designated terrorist organizations and declaring that the United States exists in a state of armed conflict with these groups. This classification allows the administration to invoke the 2001 authorization for use of military force, the same legal authority used to prosecute the war on terror against Al-Qaeda. A classified legal opinion treats drug traffickers as unlawful combatants who can be summarily eliminated without judicial review, trial, or appeals. A category created during the Bush administration for Al-Qaeda fighters that's now being stretched to cover alleged drug smugglers in international waters. Critics have been swift and harsh in their condemnation. Brian Finucane of the International Crisis Group pointedly noted there's a world of difference between alleged narcos and Al-Qaeda, emphasizing there was no armed attack on the United States like 9/11 and no legitimate armed conflict, just premeditated killing. 3 UN human rights experts issued a scathing joint letter declaring that the use of lethal force in international waters without proper legal basis constitutes extrajudicial executions, and that military action against sovereign states represents an even graver breach of the UN Charter. Senator Mark Kelly revealed that when administration officials briefed Congress, they had a very hard time explaining the legal rationale and constitutionality of the strikes. Lawmakers were told about a secret list of over 20 narco organizations targeted for potential strikes, a classified kill list reminiscent of the Obama administration's controversial targeted killing program. A bipartisan war powers resolution, sponsored by Senators Adam Schiff and Tim Kaine, attempted to restrain the administration from launching further strikes without congressional approval. It failed in the Senate by a narrow 51-48 vote on October 8th, essentially giving tacit approval, or at least declining to prevent the campaign's continuation and expansion. Former Chief White House ethics lawyer Richard Painter bluntly declared the strikes a violation of international law, while Senator Rand Paul criticized the administration's cavalier attitude toward eliminating people without trials. When Vice President J.D. Vance responded to criticism by saying he didn't give a damn what critics called it, he crystallized the administration's attitude. Legal niceties matter less than demonstrative action. The strikes have ignited a diplomatic inferno across Latin America. Colombian President Gustavo Petro called the attacks murder and insisted some victims were little more than local fishermen. When Trump called Petro a thug and threatened serious action against Colombia, Petro responded by threatening to sue Trump and his officials in U.S. courts for slander. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro condemned the American military presence as an extravagant threat, with his UN representative pleading to the Security Council that there's a killer prowling the Caribbean, bloodthirsty and looking for wars, with no justification whatsoever. The Trump administration doubled the bounty on Maduro to $50 million, accusing him of supporting Tren de Aragua and facilitating drug trafficking. Brazil's President Lula da Silva said U.S. forces in the Caribbean had become a source of tension and favored negotiations over military action. Not everyone opposes the campaign. Puerto Rico's governor thanked the Trump administration for fighting cartels in the hemisphere. Trinidad and Tobago's prime minister praised the strikes enthusiastically, declaring she had no sympathy for traffickers and supporting aggressive military action. The Dominican Republic granted the United States permission to use its airports for staging counter-narcotics flight operations, effectively becoming a forward operating base for the campaign. Beneath the explosions and geopolitical posturing lies an inconvenient truth that drug policy experts have been trying to highlight. This campaign may be strategically misguided. Senator Kelly pointed out a fundamental flaw. The Caribbean routes predominantly used by boats being targeted carry cocaine to Europe, not to the United States. Fentanyl, the drug driving America's overdose crisis, typically enters through different routes, primarily through official ports of entry along the southern border in personal vehicles or commercial trucks. U.S. government research consistently shows that most drug trafficking occurs overland and through legal ports of entry, not via speedboats in international waters. Interdicting Caribbean and Pacific maritime routes may disrupt cocaine flows to Europe, but it's unclear how much impact it has on the fentanyl poisoning American communities. Trump claims each boat strike saves 25,000 lives, but fact-checkers have demolished this math. Total U.S. drug overdose fatalities in 2024 were approximately 80,000. Trump's initial claim of 300 million was off by a factor of nearly 4,000. The administration's evidence for boats carrying enough narcotics to prevent tens of thousands of overdoses remains unverified. In several strike videos, visible packages in the water appear modest in quantity, hardly the massive shipments that would justify such extraordinary life-saving claims. Trump himself acknowledged the campaign might push traffickers toward land routes, stating they will be hit very hard when they come in by land. This admission raises the specter of strikes expanding beyond international waters to sovereign territory, an escalation that would represent true acts of war against Colombia, Ecuador, or other nations. Defense Secretary Hegseth has made clear these strikes will continue day after day, with 8 Navy ships in the Caribbean, F-35s in Puerto Rico, Reapers conducting surveillance, and a nuclear submarine capable of launching cruise missiles from unseen depths. Lost in the geopolitical maneuvering and legal debates are human beings who perished in explosions on the open ocean. Were they hardened cartel enforcers who knowingly chose a violent profession, low-level couriers trying to feed their families, fishermen in the wrong place at the wrong time, as President Petro alleges? We don't know, because there were no arrests, no interrogations, no trials, just explosions. The 2 survivors from the October 16 narco submarine strike were repatriated almost immediately, presumably before they could tell their stories to journalists or human rights organizations. The administration points to packages floating in the water after strikes as proof of drug cargo. But even assuming those packages contain narcotics, it doesn't answer whether those targeted were given any opportunity to surrender or whether less lethal options were considered. The Pacific strikes represent more than tactical expansion. They represent the normalization of military violence as drug policy. What began as extraordinary action in the Caribbean has become routine procedure extending across hemispheres. The casualty count approaches 40. Congressional oversight remains minimal. International law is dismissed, and the administration promises the strikes will continue indefinitely. The comparison to the war on terror is apt and should be cautionary. That conflict, launched with broad public support and clear legal authorization after 9/11, metastasized into a 2-decade quagmire spanning multiple countries, costing trillions of dollars and resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties. It normalized drone strikes, targeted operations, indefinite detention, and expansive executive war powers. Now we're witnessing the same playbook applied to drug trafficking. The rhetoric is nearly identical, the legal authorities recycled from the AUMF, even the technology comes directly from the counter-terrorism arsenal.
The boats burning in the Pacific are more than drug interdictions. They're beacons illuminating a fundamental question about what kind of nation America wants to be. One path leads toward accepting this as the new normal, a world where suspected drug traffickers anywhere in international waters can be eliminated without trial based on classified intelligence and secret lists. The other path leads toward pulling back from this precipice, reasserting legal constraints, demanding congressional authorization and oversight, and recognizing that however serious the drug crisis may be, responding with unchecked military violence creates precedents and consequences that may ultimately prove more dangerous than the problem they purport to solve. The drug war has gone global, and with each strike, with each casualty, with each expansion of targeting authorities, we move further down a path that may prove extraordinarily difficult to reverse. The question now is whether anyone can stop it before it escalates beyond control in distant waters.